Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhairagale, ni hao, chunushumme, washmale. Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal? Hale shuma chatore, ahlan wasal, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabia, balli kare, hosh galden, anayo sayo, huyamora, chivato, chihal, yud, kali mera, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Hajar Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and yet again, early in the morning, I was a little confused whether why is it still so cold. Hajra, how are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for introducing me. I don't think so. It's very cold. It's very pleasant outside there, and obviously the weather is very confusing because finally we are transitioning from winter to spring, and I really don't like that transition because I think I like winters more because Pakistan's summers are extremely hot and they're extremely crazy.
True.
So Shahzad, when we were growing up, obviously we do not had the mobiles, and I think that was a very luxury product at that time, and it was very rarely available at that time. So we grew up having a lot of physical activity with games, playing outside, and obviously we used to read books because there was a vibrant book culture, especially in the libraries. So I wanted to take this liberty to ask you, what sort of books did you read when you were growing up?
I mean, I think when I was growing up, just because, you know, we were going to school and, you know, there was always this pressure from our parents that, hey, you know what, you need to study. So we didn't really were in love with a lot of books back then. But I think, having said, you know, we were lucky enough to go to a good school. You know, I went to Beria College over here in Islamabad.
Yes, and he told me very well that he went.
It's an E9 complex, you know. So every year what they would do is, I think they were very smart about it. So every year what they would do is, because they knew and they understood that these kids are not going to read books on their own. So what they did was that they would make a storybook a part of our syllabi as well. And, you know, every single year we had to go through that. So one, obviously, we read that book about Sally.
Okay.
The other, we read that book about, you know, that man who was a hospital. Have you heard about that?
Man who was a hospital?
Yeah. Or the boy who was a hospital. And it was, you know, so the story is actually about a boy and that, you know, he visits a hospital and wherever he goes, he sees these ill people. And unfortunately, he starts to think that he has the same sickness.
Okay, so have you read Matilda, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Yeah, obviously.
Yes.
So we've read that as well. And then, you know, this other one where
the witches, because they had this depiction of lot of women who were actually the witches. So, and one of the witch turns that kid into a rat, and so Roald Dahl wrote all of this. I always had a problem pronouncing his name because I really don't know the placement of the L where it was. So I was in love with those books because obviously kids books, it's very difficult to write them, and they had a fantasy world to it. But Roald Dahl has recently been in the news because what the Penguin Group is doing, because Penguin Group is actually publishing that, is that they're hiring sensitivity experts and they're changing a lot of those books.
Okay.
So do you remember in Matilda there was this principal, she was very fat and she used to eat the lunch boxes of the kids, and she used to ill-treat a lot of students there. So they have removed the word fat from it and they have added the word enormous into that dictionary, and there's a lot of outcry against it because these are all of the objectives, right? These are all of the adjectives that are defining a particular personality out there, right? And enormous means the same. So obviously, and the sensitivity experts want to incorporate a more gender sensitivity terms into it. So I remember in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, there was these small people called Oompa Loompa. You remember them? Yes. And Oompa Loompa. So they have hired, what they have done is that the Oompa Loompa people were termed in a masculine term, like they were or he or something like that. So they have removed that word, and then they are not men, small men, they are people, right? And people are at outcry and they say that this is not right because you are actually rewriting the history, you are actually removing a lot of stuff, and this is a part of a very vibrant cultural tradition. So what happened is that Roald Dahl actually tweeted that he's going to send an enormous alligator if they ever try to change his legacy or if they try to change these books, because obviously we grew up with that, and I think that's also very sort of a very authoritarian step, rewriting books and changing the history out of that, because we have certain memories with those books. We grew up with that. Obviously, there are a lot of problems with that, but when we grew up and you can see actually how they have
Yeah.
actually changed that,
So from
right?
2001 to 2022, you could actually see, how they
Yes.
there's a different version of it now.
Yes,
And
exactly.
what I certainly, Haja, cannot wrap my head around is that, whether, calling somebody fat is body shaming or whether calling somebody enormous is body shaming. I
Exactly,
think,
they point to the same
yeah,
thing out there.
exactly.
I mean, and obviously, especially in the witches, because there's also a movie over there and there's a storybook out there. So there's this character and the main protagonist, the kid, he goes to his grandma and he asks, says, so, and then the grandma replies in the newer version that, you should be careful about it, because because in the description of the witches, they're barred, so they wear wigs. So the gender sensitivity doctor said that it's very insensitive to comment badly on the woman's
Yeah.
head, and they talked about that how you should be more mindful of that, because women can wear wigs for a lot of other reasons too, right? And
Or
there's
probably anything, maybe
Yes.
makeup, wigs or anything.
Yes, and I think we belong to the media industry and we are certainly aware of this fact.
Even men.
Yes, even men do that, right? So I think that there's a lot of crime, and because of that backlash, they have decided to reverse those changes, because obviously when you are rewriting books, you are rewriting history, that is exactly the version of the Orwellian world of the Big Brother, when they're actually also doing the same. They're changing, rewriting history, changing books, changing pictures, erasing history, and that it isn't how it should be, right?
Exactly, but Haja, at the same point, what I would like to mention over here is that, for somebody to think like this, I think is a great idea. Because imagine that, we people have transcended to being very insensitive as well towards all of the...
Do you think it can incorporate more sensitivity in the society if we
I
are
mean,
like that?
I think it can, only if we use the right jargon. I think only if we use the right vocabulary, only if we use the right words, which actually won't really make people offend, or feel the other way around that, okay, somebody's targeting me. I think that it can be a good step and it can take us to a good direction where we will be a more, I think, patient society or community together. And I think that we really need to step towards that. But having said, I think, while we were talking about books, I would certainly want to talk about music over here as well, because every now and then you would have these remixes, so I don't know, some DJ Holy and something of that sort, and Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan songs come out in huge numbers, and people are remixing and everybody's enjoying Tumhe Dil Lagi and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, that's not the song I knew already. And then you certainly would rather you would enjoy it, or probably it's the other way around. I think it totally depends on to the listener as well. But since the weather over here in Islamabad is so fantastic and phenomenal, it rained last night as well. And as you mentioned that it's pleasant, it wasn't pleasant for me. I had to roll up my window. I was like, okay, I'm feeling cold.
Okay.
So ladies and gentlemen, today I think what we wanted to do was that we wanted to start with some good instrumental music all the way from Kalam and Chitral. We're very lucky that we've been joined by Mir Afzal Bhai. Mir Afzal Bhai, Assalamu Alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you. You were performing at the Dubai Expo as well, and you brought back a lot of good name. Thanks to Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Wonderful.
Please.
And alongside Mr. Mir Afzal, we're very lucky that we've been joined by Mr. Abid Ali, who happens to be from Kalam. Thank you so much for joining us. And not just that, ladies and gentlemen, after the music, we will be talking about
Books.
libraries and books, and I think it's Hajra's favorite topic as well, and now it's becoming my favorite topic because you really need to be here. And so we're very lucky that we've actually been joined by somebody who happens to be a research scholar. He's a director, librarian as well at the ISSI. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Mr. Abid Hussain. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine. So far, so good.
So
Thank
far,
you.
so good. So before we talk about books, let's refresh our ears with a little bit of instrumental
Okay,
music.
okay.
Let's go, sir.
Okay.
amazing start to our day, and not just our day, to all of the viewers who are listening out there, because traditional music always has something that is very innate in us, and that also reverberates across our hearts and also our minds. Having said so, I wanted to ask, before we delve into the books and all, I wanted to ask, what is exactly this instrument, and do you want to shed some light on that?
मीर भाई, सो हम इसको सितार बोलते हैं, ऐसे ही है
जी सर, इसका
लेकिन
नाम
मैंने
सितार
बड़े अरसे बाद इतना दुबला पतला डाइटिंग वाला सितार देखा है। पहले तो मोटे मोटे सितार
नहीं
देखता
सर,
था।
वो भी है, वो जो है ना, ये पहाड़ी सितार है, उसको आप पहाड़ी कह
पहाड़
सकते
पे
हैं,
चढ़ चढ़ के फिट हो गया।
जो हमारा गिलगित बल्तिस्तान और
कलाम
स्वात चतराल
हाँ जी।
और केपीके में सवाबाई मर्दान, वहाँ पे इसी सितार को बजाया जाता है।
Wonderful. Thank you very much for explaining it to us, ladies and gentlemen. It's like a sister of sitar, and sitar obviously we do know as it with fat frets and whatnot, and then
Not fat, enormous.
no, enormous, enormous size obviously, but now when we talk about it, obviously it actually kind of relates and depicts the true picture of how our people in the north kind of enjoy themselves, because it's more about instrumental music, and it is a cultural representation of ours. So you go to Kalam,
Right.
Sawa, Chitral, everywhere, you will find such instruments over there, and people just play it, to the vibe they have, because it's just mountains just around them, people coming and going. There's not a lot of urban hustle bustle out there.
Yes,
So
yes.
you certainly do enjoy it as well. But thank you very much, Mir bhai. हम जरा आबिद भाई के पास हो लें। अस्सलाम वालेकुम आबिद.
Walaikum
How are
salam.
you?
I'm okay, sir.
Thank you very much for joining us once again. Wonderful to have you over here. But I think today we gather over here to learn about the importance of libraries and digital libraries. So I'm not very aware about how many digital libraries we might have, but because we have Google Scholar and all of these amazing platforms, I think it's more of a library, no?
But before we delve more into it, I really want to ask, because a lot of time when I am doing my research, there's particular paywall, and you have to pay. Unless you don't do that, you cannot access to
And
that.
you should.
Obviously we should, but I think we are residents of the third world country, and it's very expensive because dollar rate is skyrocketing, and we can't really afford that. And so we have, for a good research, we have to delve into a lot of research articles. So imagine if one article, or if one research paper costs us around some $19, or if one book costs around $70. So imagine where would the bill goes, and we really can't afford, the daily routines of what to talk about that. So I think there's a digital divide, and what exactly is the HEC doing to remove that digital divide and make knowledge more accessible to people?
As you know, the HEC Higher Education Commission has offered a very good collection of databases.
For
Those are in the
example?
form of electronic books
Okay.
and electronic journals. There are more than 16 databases right now with HEC, and they have grant access to public and private sector universities. Some of them are basic resources. Those are Taylor and Francis, JSTOR, Science Direct, and similar other databases. More of them are premium. They get access by paying some amounts by the university or institutions who offer research programs. So HEC Higher Education Commission is a regulatory authority in education, and they have checked that how many university accessing these materials and what numbers of they are getting collections from higher education digital library with license fee.
Yes. So moving on to the topics of books, and I too feel, Shahzad, that libraries, especially the public libraries, they're facing the crisis of relevance, because whenever I need a book, I would usually drop by a bookstore and buy and purchase from that. I would hardly go to the libraries, and that is why I think the role of library has been marginalized into fringes. So how to make them more relevant to our entire discourse, and to make sure that the kids are more into reading, especially from the public libraries?
Public libraries are running by government of Pakistan. You know that every government is running public libraries and as well as national libraries. Purchasing books is very difficult right now. You know that financial crunch is offering, and the government of Pakistan is always claiming that we are poor and we have some financial cuts. Similarly, in the libraries, you know that is a government regulatory authority. They are making cuts in the library budgets. Sometimes you will face the difficulties, but in alternative, you can find the digital books. So that's the simple and cheap sources of information.
Exactly. But sir, having said that, I think I have a very important thing to ask, and that is that while we were university students, we could see that whenever we would go to our university's library, you know, so they would have all the books, you know, which might cover our syllabi. You know, so it wasn't really about, you know, how many books they would have under the genre of fiction or probably drama or storytelling or documentaries, you know, of such sort, or biographies. But having said, you know, I think that this question which Haja asked is very pertinent, it's very relevant that, you know, so imagine that we are talking about public libraries, but they are not really relatable for people like me and Hajra. Because imagine that if we are to, you know, kind of learn about a personality, we might not even find that book or autobiography in that library of yours, which we call a public library. What's the point of us going to a public library eventually if the library is not going to cater to our needs? So what's the point of having a library then?
You know that libraries and universities, you talk about academic university libraries.
Yeah.
In academic libraries, majority of funds are creating by the students' expenditures, expenses. They are cutting some amount, and apart from that, government also giving them grants.
Yeah.
So university always cover the syllabi book.
Yeah.
Majority of the universities are covering, but the public library, that is running by public and the government
Exactly.
combinedly. That's why, that's the reason that sometimes you cannot book the relevant book which you required at the time. So public library cannot fulfill all your demands. You know that
At
the
least
budget.
one of our demands should be fulfilled, na? Not all of them, you know, at
No,
least
no,
we
no.
should
One,
get something.
very few.
Yeah.
Pertinent book, as you mentioned that in time of needs, if I need any book on accounting, let's suppose, public library will cover all those books that is relevant to fiction, dramas, and literature books.
We'll find Manto,
Of
Dr.
course,
Allama Muhammad Iqbal, you
Yeah,
know, all
of
of these
course.
books we're going to get over there, and it's interesting.
that is for general publics.
Yeah.
You know that general publics, different people
Probably
are different.
general
class.
knowledge.
Yeah, of course, they are offering.
And also, Shahzad, we see that it's a digital age, right? We see Twitter, we see Facebook, we see Instagram. There are so many tweets out there, so many pictures out there. It's really difficult to save them, right?
True.
And because of this culture, because of the digitalization, there's a conversation going on, especially among the book readers, that a lot of people are predicting actually the death of the book because no one is reading book, and I can literally feel the effects of that because I do remember I was a very avid reader of the books, and now I'm not reading that often as I used to read.
I go
before.
through the same.
Yes.
You know, so imagine, because I always, you know, that one book which I'm reading these days, you know,
Yes.
it's always on my side table. You know, I'm done with 2 chapters. I think I've got another 10 to go.
Yes.
And every time I just sat right next to my side table, I'm like, okay, I think I still have to leave for work. And then, you know, the book's still there. But I always make sure that, you know, even if it's 1 page or 2 pages, I will still read. But having said so,
But
sir,
there's so much distraction, right, in the form of the mobile. Maybe
Yeah.
sometime your kids are
I mean,
playing
people
out
just
there.
keep on calling here. I
Yes.
mean, that's something I don't get.
Right.
You know, imagine, so now the trend is that, okay, so even if I am in my room, my mother's going to call me from downstairs. Can you please come downstairs and need to talk to you? And I'm like, why can't you just say it to me right here, you know? But so having said, obviously that distraction is real. But sir, how do you think, what are the most common ways of making sure that we connect people with libraries and that, you know, we build the
Yes.
culture of people going to libraries?
Wonderful question.
There are many question arises about how to connect people with the libraries. The library should be catchy by infrastructure. There should be ventilation system. There should be modern technologies like computer technologies, internet and Wi-Fi connection should also be there. The library should be a hub of authors. Different authors who wrote different books can come together and discuss the book. They should also organize a book walk and awareness. For the awareness, they should also contact the nearby institutions to please send your students, as well as to the community. They should also create a WhatsApp group, a Facebook group, and so many other platforms they can use to attract people. Apart from that, they can also run an advertisement.
To attract people and to distract people.
Yes, I
think
think
it will happen
distraction
at
is
the
a-
both.
That's true.
Library will never distract the people.
No, that's not what I'm saying, but a WhatsApp group will. That's what I'm saying.
No, for connection, to make a connection. The
Exactly.
new arrival should also be shared that what exists in the library.
And it is a brilliant idea, so that, you know, that you can always be updated whether which books are coming in and which books you can
the
actually
catalog
share
should
with
also
other
be there,
people.
online public access catalog.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Well, thank you very much,
Exactly.
Abid Bhai, for
Thank
being
you
with
so
us.
much.
Lovely to be in conversation with you. And Mir Bhai, you know, we want to go for a short break. तो जाने से पहले एक खूबसूरत सा इंस्ट्रूमेंटल हमें सुनाई जरा.
मैं गिलगित बल्तिस्तान का एक ट्यून बजाऊंगा क्योंकि मेरी ज़बान शिना है
जी।
तो इस दफ़ा शिना आप
सर जरूर. जी बताओ. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying tuned. Obviously, we are trying to make sure that your moods are lifted and elevated, and that you're going to have a great day today. Because today, ladies and gentlemen, there's a very important aspect of life which we want to talk about. Now, Hajra, unfortunately, most of the time, what happens is that people, when they get ill,
Yes.
the diagnosis is not done in time, and just because the diagnosis is not in time, unfortunately, it can actually cost them their life, and it can be fatal.
Exactly.
But having said so, Hajrat, the best part is that, on the last day of the February, every year, there's this day which we call the World Rare Disease Day, and is being observed as well, and hence we are observing to make sure that we raise more awareness about all of these rare diseases. Having said so, I think that the core motive over here is that for a lot of people who are actually suffering from such an illness, which is a rare disease, there's not a lot of research which has been
That's
put in.
true.
There's not a lot of money which has been invested in it as
Yeah.
well. And unfortunately, that the lifestyle of those people certainly will suffer. And God forbid, if we are not going to talk about it, not a lot of research will be done
Yes.
regarding that rare disease. And unfortunately, they won't be able to get back to life the way we have been living our life.
That's true, and sometimes diagnosis is not even correct in the first place. So what exactly is the World Rare Disease Day? And to symbolize this day, so it is recommended that we should wear a zebra stripes clothes, but certainly unfortunately we couldn't do that. But why exactly zebra? So we have all of these questions in our mind, and we wanted to ask what exactly is World Rare Disease, and what is the proportion of that disease which is prevalent in the population. So we're very glad that we have been joined by one of the best doctors, who happens to be Dr. Usman Aftab Ahmed. He also is the consultant gastroenterologist. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
And a hepatologist as well, all the way from Maroof Hospital. It's wonderful to have all of you doctors, from Maroof Hospital. And Maroof Hospital over here in Islamabad has been doing a phenomenal job. But thank you very much for joining us. You look dapper and smart. That's how doctors really need to look as well. Clean shave, all good.
Yes.
But sir, having said so, this is for the very first time that I got to know about World Rare Disease Day.
Yes.
And imagine that, there might be a lot of people who might not even know, even as of now in 2023, that what's wrong with them, and they certainly are looking for answers. So how important do you think is this day, and how do we refer to it, or how do we reflect upon this?
So as you correctly said, and it's in the name, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a World Rare Disease Day, so it is rare. Not a lot of people know about it, and especially you can say in a country with our financial resources and our depleting health system, is it important to celebrate or to recognize a World Disease Day, Rare Disease Day?
Observe,
And when we don't have proper treatments for the usual things. But the important notion here, and the theme this year from the World Rare Disease Day, is share your colors.
Yeah.
Hence the zebra stripes.
Yeah.
Because we have to celebrate the diversity. We have to accept that there are
Wonderful.
conditions which we don't understand.
True.
Like a disease that is very prevalent now, or we know about it. Once it was a rare disease.
Right.
Let's be honest about it.
For example, tuberculosis.
Simple things like the first vaccine when it came out for smallpox all centuries ago, it was a rare disease. Still date, 1 in 5 cancers that people get is a rare disease.
Okay.
So this is why the reason for organizing and observing these days is to make people more comfortable.
So if we can't get the exact treatment for that, it becomes a rare, right? This is how we categorize
So
it.
the category, there are different definitions, but what the WHO and all the international societies take it as a rare disease is a disease that is prevalence is less than 1%, 1 in 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even by that definition, not a
quite a
lot
lot.
of diseases are, yes, exactly. The fact that it makes them rare is because the rare diagnosis
Okay.
is not very common. We don't have tests up till yet. This is why I said all the diseases at one point in time were rare. I can share an anecdote. One of my British society meetings, when hepatitis C, this is how old I am. So when hepatitis C was coming on the stage, a lot of British professors used to say, this is a phase. This is not going to last. And now look where we are with this.
Right.
So the idea is to recognize that there are rare diseases,
Yeah.
to validate people, to do research on it, but more importantly, we have to accept people who have these rare diseases.
And a lot of time, I think we have talked about it before that, Shahzad, is what happens is that a lot of people, and it's not specifically related to the rural phenomena, it's also a lot of times that we can find the prevalence of this particular thinking in the urban areas, is that people are very reluctant and hesitant towards to go to the doctors. Rather, they would prefer going towards the fake spiritual healers or the quacks, and they fall into the wrong hands, and they could not make a correct diagnosis, obviously, because they're not the experts in the first place, right? And there's this misconception with their side, their religious belief that Allah ne zindagi itti likhi hai, and what is destined for us will happen regardless of whatever the efforts we make, right? So Dr. Saab, you are the expert in this field. So if someone with such sort of thinking comes to you, how do you correct that fallacy and make sure that the medicine is accessible to that person?
The first problem is, I think a lot of people, yes, it's very easy for us to say, sitting in urban areas, oh yeah, rural people act this way. I think part of the problem is they are disillusioned by the health sector in a general.
Okay.
So the problem happens is because it's a privately funded health system in general in Pakistan, everything is costing a patient money. The problem with the rare diseases or these novel diseases, let's put it that way, is that one, by the time you get to their specific diagnosis, patient has spent a lot of money.
True.
So now this becomes a problem for them, for a limited resources family. The other problem becomes is because most of these diseases that we are talking about them today are neurological, or they are not well researched at the moment. So they don't present like somebody won't walk in my door and say, I'll say, yes, this is that. So it's not going to be that. So that's why it's causing money. The problem becomes in, first of all, the first thing that a family member or some elder in the village would say, this is voodoo.
That's true.
Or black magic.
That's
like psychiatric problems up till a century ago were all black magic.
That's true.
This is saya or call whatever. Exactly. That's the problem. Because they go through these systems a lot, it's very difficult for the health sector and for the patient itself to come out of that zone.
That's true.
And this, I agree with you, this becomes a bit difficult. I think patient-centered care is probably important. Validating for, and this is not just Pakistan. I can tell you by my work abroad as well, the single most important thing the patient wants is validation. That I don't think the symptoms are fake.
Exactly. And sir, in addition to that, okay, so what I would want to do is that, let's be Pakistan specific now, because imagine that over here, you've rightfully mentioned that, we cannot, most of the times, the people are not diagnosed as they should have been. And unfortunately, I've been sharing this story with our viewers as well, that post-pandemic, there was this condition with babies as well, which we call the multi-inflammatory syndrome, and not a lot of people knew about it. So I went to the doctor, and for a couple of days, they kept on testing my baby girl, and they certainly didn't come up with any diagnosis. And then, they had to call in a lot of professors, they came in and they were like, okay, it's a multi-inflammatory syndrome, and only then we can target it, because he said that, I do not even know where the enemy is, so how can I help? So imagine that, how do you think that we can actually kind of help people who might have a rare disease? How will they be diagnosed in the first place? And then having said so, because I said that it's going to be Pakistan specific, we hardly have any research facility. For all of these blood tests, or for all of these testing we do, we get all of these machinery from outside. There's zero research that we put into it, so hardly it's going to come down to a Panadol or an Arinac Fort, and just take it and go back home.
I think the first thing that we can do for a nation who's got limited resources for health sector, and let's be honest about it, about other development projects as well, I think it's acceptance.
Okay.
Because still you see a lot of people roaming in the community who have a disease. I'm not going to go into semantics of what specific disease it is, because there are about 160 or something on the charter of this forum. So, and some are really difficult, like water allergies and foreign accent syndromes, and I'm not talking about them.
Right.
All I'm saying is we as a nation has to start accepting people. This is where the zebra stripes comes in. Yes. This is where the theme of the day comes in, share your colors. Okay. That we accept people. You rightly said we don't have research facilities. I think the single most thing we can do is start a patient registry, which is just documenting. Because yes, we might not be able to help that particular patient, but it might be able to help future patients who come across. And just to give you a small example, there is a disease called celiac disease, which is wheat intolerance. It's not rare. Okay. It's common in the world. It's not very prevalent in Pakistan. Okay. Why it's not prevalent in Pakistan? Because nobody tests it. So,
I thought because we eat your lot of wheat, that is why.
Even I thought the same. Even I thought the same. I was like, okay, how can it be
Okay,
deficient
yes.
over here? Yeah.
Because we have plenty
Roti
over here.
khao,
Yes.
parathe
it's
khao.
allergy to
Yeah.
Yes.
wheat.
Okay.
And then you can imagine, because that
So
comes
it's like
in
lactose intolerance.
lactose intolerance, but because this is not just I want to leave it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it'll feel better. No, it's a condition. So the treatment is you have to stop wheat. Now in a country like Pakistan,
Where you only have wheat.
you imagine my job when I am turning around to people and say, you can't have grains from tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can't have wheat from tomorrow. You
Exactly,
can't
you're
have-
saying you have kal se roti nahi kha sakte.
Exactly. No burger, no pizza, no roti.
Oh my God.
No
That's
carbs.
it.
So,
So it becomes really difficult.
True.
So this is where the restaurants and the markets and because it's very difficult to find no gluten wheat
gluten-free.
flour.
Yeah.
So this is what I want the message to be from behest of your channel, is that we should accept diversity.
But sir, it's important to diagnose as well now, so how do you think that, we can do that, or we can come down to a point that for all of 160 rare diseases that we are able to kind of at least diagnose and kind of guide them that, okay, you know what, your quality of life will probably be affected by it, but you certainly will be living a longer and a better lifestyle.
I think I would be the first one to say that community in general should take responsibility of health sector, not just the government. But in this specific area, because this is a very niche thing, and it requires lots of funding, and there are not lots of people to make it, let's say, a business case for it. Let's put it that way. But what I would hope that happens is the government, which they are already doing, to establish center of excellences. This has to be more centralized. This can't be, you can't open a small center in every small city.
That's
It has to come to a bigger urban center.
True.
And let's talk about obesity, because I do feel that obesity is a very pertinent problem, especially in Pakistan, and it thrives side by side the poverty, and which is very perplexing in the first place to grasp the entire concept, because in the UK and in the West there is a general debate, and I think they have put the sweetness taxes on it, especially on these fizzy drinks, the carbonated drinks, in order to avoid that. And I think in general they have a more the element of the mobility in their lifestyles, because usually you would find they're putting on the joggers and they're walking on the trams, because we don't find that culture here in Pakistan. So Dr. Saab, how can
And
we
yet we do
curtail-
not have any taxes, God forbid, if we are to
Yes.
see around as well on alcohol, so we will have taxes on sweeteners and whatnot, but there are no taxes on alcohol. Wow.
And so how can we curtail the menace of obesity in Pakistan?
Well, first of all, obesity is not rare. So let's put it that way. Let's just clear this out.
Yeah.
So it's not rare. The problem with obesity is more in eating habits. It's very easy to say, look, I'm overweight, I understand it. The first thing is acceptance. A lot of people have problem accepting it. The next step is what you have to do about it. You can't just say, I will go to a doctor and I will take a pill and that will go away. No rich person would be fat then.
True.
There is no medication in the world, even bariatric surgeries, I can guarantee that without changing your lifestyle, without changing your daily habits and your eating habits,
Yeah, true.
you can lose weight. This can't. This is a simple, I'll tell you a simple maths. I tell my patients about it. You require 2,000 calories in a day. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has got a health app on it.
Yeah.
You start counting your calories in a day.
Okay.
And you will know. Bring that down to 1,300, 1,500.
And you'll be
losing
fine.
weight.
And you'll be
Exactly,
fine.
start
It's a
losing weight.
simple solution, and sir, in addition to that, okay, because I want to kind of refer back to where I said that, okay, diagnosis is important. So just a few days ago, I was in conversation with this dentist nephew of mine, who actually was at a house job in PIMS, and he said that most of the times we do not even get the right equipment and we have to buy it out of our pockets to fulfill the needs of all of those needy patients who walk into a PIMS hospital knowing that, it's a government-owned entity and that the treatment will be for free. Now imagine that in a country like that, we are actually talking about, rare diseases which are in huge numbers out there. Even if it is 1 out of 2,000 people, imagine that the total population of ours is 22 crores, 23 crore. So imagine that there are a lot of people who are living with that. So for a person who goes to a public hospital and cannot actually be entertained because there's no equipment or there's no medicine available, how do you think that we can actually kind of prioritize it?
No, I agree with you. And since I've come back from England, I've become skeptical and cynical about these things as well. No, because a lot of doctors, and I'll be honest about it,
Yeah.
a lot of health sector is because they are making their money off common stuff.
True.
We don't want to indulge ourselves into some difficult or novel
kharcha
or
kare
niche.
aur return na hai.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think this is where the governments have to step in.
Okay.
But from a person, I'll throw this back to the community. Look, yes, there are things that are beyond our control because we can't just point out fingers. Nobody can print dollars and just say, yeah, we'll throw billions of dollars on health sector. The reason we are talking about the Western world is they have hundreds of billions of dollars and pounds on their health sector invested. So we're not going to match this.
Okay.
What we can do as a community is just be inclusive. People who have these problems, we just have to validate them.
Yeah.
I think that is, as a community, my message to your viewers would be, don't just shun them out.
That's true.
Yes, doctor fraternity has the responsibility to start diagnosing them or
True.
at least guide them in a certain way.
True.
And from doctor point of view, I think it is very important to develop this habit is doctors should say, I can't do this.
Exactly.
Go somewhere else. I think this is a very important thing to say.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes,
very much for
thank you
saying
so
that
much for
because
saying
that's
that.
exactly what I wanted to
Exactly.
wrap it up on as well. So very
Exactly.
quickly, I'm going to ask you to say it again because what I've seen is that people, rather than setting a precedence with doing multiple tests, what they would do is that the doctor will go with their gut feeling that, okay, you know, previously I might have come across such a case, and they would start treating the case, and God forbid it's going to get worse, and then they'll be like, "Enu Lahore le jaao, enu Islamabad le jaao." And unfortunately, that's the true reality over here. So why don't you, in your own words, explain to each and every doctor today that, hey, you know, if you do not know about it, please tell them
Yes.
that, hey, I think you need to go consult somebody else.
So he's putting words in our mouth. First of all, I don't want to be shut out of the doctor fraternity, but I, as a senior colleague and a student of medicine, yes, this is a message I would give to budding doctors and the doctors who are aspiring to become specialists and all. It is okay to say no. It is okay to say, I do not know what is going on. Go to a specialist. People will respect you for it. Even to this day, I say this. If I can't provide a service, I will say, I can't do it. I'll guide you who can.
And we need more
Thank you.
people like you in our
Thank you
community
so
and
much.
society as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for
Thank
being
you
with
so
us.
much.
Lovely to be in conversation with you. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you look after yourselves and your loved ones as well, because you never know what kind of challenge they might be coming across in their life. So please make sure that you're full of support, and that support system is required and important as well. Until next time, 1, 2,
It's a-
3, good
Goodbye.
morning.